It just goes right to you.
So you would say Gerry Cooney was one of the hardest punchers you've ever met in the ring?
He's been the three. Even harder than Joe Frazier with his left hook.
Harder than Joe Frazier?
Harder.
Gerry Cooney was supposed to be boxing's great white savior in the 1980s. The Irish-American heavyweight from New York had a devastating left hook and movie star looks that made promoters dream of huge paydays. Boxing executives believed Cooney could bring back white fans who had lost interest in a sport dominated by black champions.
Any of his previous 19 fights was come back, and he better be serious because he's got millions and millions of dollars at stake here.
The media loved everything about Cooney's story. He came from a working-class Irish family, had an explosive fighting style, and looked like a Hollywood action hero. Promoters spent millions of dollars building his reputation and carefully selecting his opponents to create the perfect record for a title shot against Larry Holmes.
Only 5 with the left. Cooney getting it now from Holmes. For a moment looked like Gerry might go down.
But Cooney's rapid rise to fame created powerful enemies throughout the heavyweight division. Many experienced fighters felt he was getting opportunities he hadn't earned through years of hard fights and dedication. They saw him as a manufactured product of promotional hype rather than a legitimate contender who had paid his dues. Some black fighters took his Great White Hope label as a personal insult that suggested they weren't good enough to be boxing's biggest stars. Others resented the media attention and money that Cooney received, while more skilled fighters were ignored by promoters and television networks. Cooney discovered that being promoted as boxing's white savior meant making enemies everywhere he went. Veterans questioned his heart and ability. Contenders felt cheated out of opportunities. Champions saw him as a threat to their earning power. These 6 boxers hated Gerry Cooney more than anyone else and wanted to destroy his carefully built reputation. 6. Michael Dokes. At number 6 is Michael Dokes, the talented heavyweight who couldn't stand watching Gerry Cooney get all the attention and opportunities that Dokes believed he deserved more.
He's putting on a show. The first 2 rounds were very lethargic in his exhibition with Ballard. Then Ali.
Both fighters were rising contenders in the early 1980s, but Cooney was getting the big fights and media coverage, while Dokes was struggling to get noticed by promoters and television networks. Dokes had better amateur credentials and more professional experience than Cooney. But boxing promoters weren't interested in pushing another black heavyweight when they had their Great White Hope to market. The skilled boxer watched Cooney fight carefully selected opponents while he had to take dangerous fights against hungry contenders just to stay relevant. The rivalry became personal when Dokes started publicly criticizing Cooney's weak competition and protected status in interviews.
Similarity because we are both boxers and entertainers in this field, so...
He told reporters that Cooney was being spoon-fed easy opponents, while real contenders like himself had to fight killers to prove themselves worthy of title shots. Dokes couldn't understand why Cooney was considered a bigger star when he had never beaten anyone important or shown the kind of skills that made great heavyweight champions. The frustrated contender felt like the boxing world was ignoring talent and ability in favor of promoting someone based on his skin color and marketability. Their personal animosity grew when boxing writers started comparing their records and asking who would win if they fought each other. Dokes always insisted he would easily beat Cooney because he had faced much tougher opposition and proven himself against better fighters than anyone Cooney had ever stepped in the ring with. 5. Tim Witherspoon. At number 5 is Tim Witherspoon, the slick boxer who exposed Gerry Cooney's technical weaknesses and proved that raw power couldn't overcome superior boxing skills and ring intelligence.
Cut, I think. Bruno putting in some of it, not giving.
Witherspoon had the kind of professional abilities that made Cooney look like an amateur when they sparred together during training camps. Their personal dislike started during sparring sessions where Witherspoon would easily outbox Cooney and make him look clumsy and predictable. The skilled veteran could slip Cooney's big left hook and counter with combinations that frustrated the power puncher. Witherspoon enjoyed embarrassing Cooney in front of other boxers and trainers. Witherspoon began telling people that Cooney was nothing more than a one-punch fighter who would never beat anyone with real boxing skills. He claimed that promoters were protecting Cooney from facing technical boxers like himself because they knew their white hope would be exposed as a limited fighter. The rivalry intensified when Witherspoon started criticizing Cooney's training methods and fighting style in boxing magazines. He told reporters that Cooney relied too much on his left hook and didn't have the boxing fundamentals to compete against elite heavyweights who could move and punch back.
Would you get in a position?
Again to the body in this manly art of self-defense. Oh.
Witherspoon felt personally insulted that boxing fans and media considered Cooney a better fighter when he had superior skills and more complete boxing abilities. The veteran boxer wanted the chance to prove in a real fight that technique and experience would always beat raw power and promotional hype in professional heavyweight boxing competition. 4. Greg Page. At number 4 is Greg Page, the overlooked heavyweight who felt completely cheated when promoters chose Gerry Cooney over him, despite Page having better amateur credentials and professional achievements. Page had been a successful amateur boxer who represented the United States in international competition, but boxing promoters ignored his accomplishments because they were focused on finding their great white hope. Page watched with growing anger as Cooney received million-dollar promotional deals and television coverage while he struggled to get decent fights and fair treatment from the boxing establishment.
Heavyweight title: Gerry could see a by knockout at 203 in round 8 of 15.
The skilled heavyweight couldn't understand why his superior boxing ability and proven track record meant less than Cooney's skin color and marketability to white audiences. Their rivalry became deeply personal when Page realized that racial politics were determining who got opportunities in heavyweight boxing. He saw Cooney as a symbol of everything wrong with boxing promotion, where image and demographics mattered more than talent and dedication to the sport. Page started making public statements about how boxing was choosing fighters based on race rather than ability. He told reporters that any honest comparison of their records and skills would show that he was the better fighter who deserved the big opportunities that Cooney was getting.
Holmes right.
The bitter heavyweight made it his personal mission to prove that Cooney was just a manufactured product who couldn't compete against real fighters like himself. Page wanted the chance to expose Cooney's weaknesses and show boxing fans that promotion and hype couldn't replace genuine boxing skills and professional experience in heavyweight competition. 3. Ken Norton. At number 3 is Ken Norton, the respected veteran who saw Gerry Cooney as an undeserving pretender who hadn't paid the dues that real heavyweight contenders were required to pay. Norton had spent years fighting the best heavyweights in the world and earning his reputation through brutal wars against Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and other legendary fighters. The former Marine couldn't stand watching Cooney get fast-tracked to title contention while serious fighters like himself had to prove themselves over and over again against dangerous opponents.
Norton with his back up against the ropes. This is where he can't afford to stay.
Norton believed that heavyweight boxing required years of hard fights against quality opposition, not careful matchmaking against hand-picked opponents. Their personal confrontations became heated when Norton publicly criticized Cooney's protected status and questioned whether he had the heart to survive against proven fighters. The veteran told reporters that Cooney had never been tested by someone who could really hurt him and fight back with professional skills. Norton felt personally insulted that boxing fans were comparing Cooney to legendary heavyweights when the Irish fighter hadn't beaten anyone important or survived the kind of punishment that made them real champions. He saw Cooney's promotion as disrespectful to veterans who had earned their positions through years of sacrifice and dedication. The experienced heavyweight wanted to teach Cooney a lesson about what professional boxing really meant by putting him in the ring with someone who had survived wars against the greatest fighters of all time. Norton believed that one fight against a proven veteran would expose Cooney as an overhyped product who couldn't handle real heavyweight competition. 2. Larry Holmes. At number 2 is Larry Holmes, the heavyweight champion who took Gerry Cooney's challenge as a personal insult and turned their fight into the most racially charged boxing match of the 1980s. Holmes had worked his way up from poverty to become champion through years of hard fights. But suddenly everyone was talking about this white challenger who was supposed to take his title away. The racial tensions surrounding their mega fight made Holmes angrier than he had ever been in his boxing career. He watched promoters market Cooney as the Great White Hope, while portraying him as just another black fighter who didn't deserve respect or recognition. Holmes felt like the boxing world was rooting against him because of his skin color. Their personal animosity exploded during press conferences where both fighters exchanged bitter insults and threats. Holmes called Cooney a fake fighter who had been protected his entire career, while Cooney questioned the champion's heart and ability to handle pressure from a real puncher. Holmes took every piece of promotional material and media coverage as a personal attack on his worth as a champion and human being. He promised to destroy Cooney and prove that no manufactured white hope could take his title away from him through hype and racial politics. The champion's anger fueled one of the most intense training camps of his career. Holmes wanted to hurt Cooney physically and mentally to send a message that heavyweight boxing belonged to fighters who had earned their positions through skill and determination, not promotional gimmicks and racial marketing. 1. Mike Tyson. At number 1 is Mike Tyson, the destroyer who ended Gerry Cooney's dreams permanently with a brutal beating that crushed his confidence and fighting spirit forever. Tyson saw Cooney as everything he hated about boxing promotion. A pretty boy who got opportunities based on looks and race instead of real fighting ability and warrior spirit. The young destroyer had grown up fighting for survival on the streets, while Cooney was being carefully protected and promoted by boxing executives. Tyson took it personally that people were comparing them as if Cooney belonged in the same conversation with a real killer who had destroyed everyone in his path. Their personal hatred started when Tyson began making threatening statements about what he would do to Cooney when they finally fought. The intimidating champion promised to hurt Cooney so badly that he would never want to fight again, and he meant every word of his psychological warfare. Tyson's brutal knockout of Cooney was more than just a victory. It was a complete destruction of everything the Irish fighter represented. The devastating beating ended Cooney's career as a serious contender and left him permanently damaged both physically and mentally from the trauma. The young champion had no respect for Cooney's reputation or promotional hype. Tyson saw him as a weak pretender who had been exposed when he finally faced a real fighter with genuine knockout power and killer instinct. The beating proved that all the promotion and media attention in the world couldn't protect someone from a truly dangerous heavyweight who wanted to hurt them. Gerry Cooney learned that being promoted as the Great White Hope meant making enemies throughout boxing's heavyweight division. His rapid rise and media attention created bitter rivalries with fighters who felt cheated and disrespected. Subscribe for more stories about boxing's most intense racial rivalries and promotional controversies.